John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood. His father, John Stanley Gacy, was an alcoholic who often beat him. Gacy didn't have a happy childhood. He struggled with his identity and was often bullied at school. Despite the difficulties, Gacy was described as a polite and helpful boy. He wanted to make his father proud but often felt like he could never measure up. Gacy's father called him names and criticized him constantly, which had a lasting impact on his self-esteem and mental health. Gacy also faced health issues. He had a heart condition that limited his physical activities, making it even harder for him to fit in with other boys. This further alienated him and contributed to his sense of isolation. Gacy spent a lot of time with his mother and sisters, which led to further bullying from his peers. As an adult, Gacy seemed like a normal, friendly man. He was well liked in his community. He even dressed up as a clown for children's parties, calling himself Pogo the Clown. Gacy was active in local politics and ran a successful construction business, but behind his friendly facade, Gacy was hiding dark secrets. Gacy was married twice and had 2 children with his first wife. Despite his seemingly stable life, his relationships were often troubled. His first marriage ended in divorce after his wife found out about his assaults on young boys. Gacy's second marriage also ended in divorce, partially due to his increasing mood swings and violent tendencies. He was also active in the JCs, a community organization, where he was known for his enthusiasm and willingness to volunteer. This involvement helped him build a reputation as a dedicated and trustworthy individual, making it easier for him to conceal his dark side. Gacy hosted neighborhood parties and was considered a generous and outgoing person. His public persona was carefully crafted. He used his charm and social skills to manipulate those around him. creating a stark contrast between his public and private lives. His ability to maintain this facade allowed him to continue his predatory behavior without raising suspicion. Gacy's criminal activities began in the 1960s. He was arrested in Iowa for sexually assaulting a teenage boy and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, he was released after serving only 18 months for good behavior. After his release, Gacy moved back to Chicago and resumed his life, but he continued to commit horrifying crimes. During his time in prison, Gacy was considered a model prisoner. He participated in many programs and even helped run the Prisoners JC chapter, a civic organization. This good behavior contributed to his early release, allowing him to return to society and continue his predatory behavior. His ability to present himself as a rehabilitated individual allowed him quickly to reintegrate into society. He resumed his community activities, further solidifying his facade of a respectful citizen, while his criminal urges remained unchecked. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured young men and boys to his home. He would often promise them work or money. Once they were in his house, he would overpower them and perform terrible acts of violence. Gacy's method was chillingly consistent. He would handcuff his victims, torture them, and eventually strangle them. He buried many of the bodies in the crawl space under his house. In total, he murdered at least 33 young men and boys. The crawl space under Gacy's house became a mass grave for many of his victims. The smell eventually became overwhelming, leading Gacy to tell visitors that there was just a plumbing issue. In reality, it was the decomposing bodies of his victims. His predatory behavior extended beyond his home. He would cruise the streets, picking up hitchhikers or young men from bus stations, often convincing his victims that he was a safe and trustworthy person. Gacy's spree finally came to an end in December 1978. A 15-year-old boy named Robert Beast went missing, and witnesses last saw him with Gacy. Police began investigating Gacy and found evidence linking him to the crime. They obtained a search warrant and discovered the remains of several victims in Gacy's home. Gacy was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. The investigation was initially slow, as Gacy was a respected member of the community. However, the persistence of Robert Beast's family and the dedication of the investigators eventually led to the breakthrough they needed. When police searched Gacy's home, they found a class ring and other items belonging to missing young men, which provided the crucial evidence to arrest him. During the investigation, Gacy attempted to charm the police, offering his assistance and even inviting them to join him for meals. Despite his efforts, the evidence against him was mounting. The search of his home revealed the horrifying truth hidden beneath the floorboards. Gacy's trial began in February 1980. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Many people testified about the horrors they had experienced or discovered. Gacy tried to plead insanity, claiming he had multiple personalities, but the jury did not believe him. He was found guilty of 33 murders and sentenced to death. The trial was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. Survivors and families of the victims shared heartbreaking statements. The jury took only 2 hours to reach a verdict. Gacy was convicted on all counts and sentenced to death by lethal injection. During the trial, the prosecution presented graphic evidence of Gacy's crimes, including photographs of the victims and detailed descriptions of the torture they endured. The emotional statements from the victims' families were a powerful reminder of the human cost of Gacy's actions. John Wayne Gacy spent 14 years on death row. During this time, he showed little remorse for his actions. He spent his time painting, often creating disturbing images of clowns. These paintings were sold at auctions, with some fetching high prices. Gacy remained a controversial figure, attracting both fascination and hatred. While on death row, Gacy gave several interviews where he downplayed his crimes and even suggested that others were responsible. Just like we mentioned before, Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. His final words were defiant and chilling.
Kiss my ass.